Imagine for a moment, stepping into an old manor where every shadow hides a secret, and every whisper carries a story long forgotten. Picture yourself standing before a portrait that seems to watch your every move, its eyes following you with quiet intensity. What would you do if the faces behind the paint began to stir, calling for help and demanding your courage? Today we journey into the haunting mysteries of Wraithmore Manor, a tale of hidden souls, forgotten secrets, and a young woman who dares to uncover the truth. Chapter 1. Air in Ashbourne was thick with an almost tangible stillness as Eleanor Reed's carriage made its way along the winding path to Wraithmore Manor. The estate loomed ahead like a relic from another century, its towers and spires silhouetted against the dimming light of late afternoon. Eleanor had visited many historical estates in her career as an art restorer, but something about Wraithmore Manor immediately set it apart, a sense that the house itself was alive. Watching and waiting, she stepped down from the carriage, the gravel crunching sharply under her boots. The gates closed with a heavy groan behind her, and she felt a shiver run down her spine. Not from the cold, for the late summer sun still clung to the horizon, but from the unmistakable aura of the manor. Eleanor adjusted the strap of her satchel, which contained the brushes, pigments, and solvents she had brought to restore the portrait. A figure emerged from the shadows near the front door. Lord Hawthorne himself. Tall, with a frame that suggested both grace and latent authority, he studied Eleanor with keen, almost piercing eyes. "Miss Reed, I presume?" His voice was smooth, measured, yet carried a subtle edge as if every word was carefully chosen. "We've been expecting you." "Yes, Lord Hawthorne. It is an honor," Eleanor replied, keeping her voice calm, though her heartbeat betrayed a hint of nervous anticipation. The hall inside the manor was a cathedral of shadows, vast and echoing with the faint creak of floorboards. Portraits of ancestors lined the walls, their eyes seeming to follow her as she passed. Lord Hawthorne led her toward the drawing room, where the portrait awaited, draped in a heavy, dust-covered cloth. "Here she is," he said, pausing with deliberate drama before lifting the cloth. Eleanor blinked as her eyes adjusted to the dim light. A woman, poised in formal elegance, stared back at her. The life-sized painting captured every delicate curve of her face, the meticulous folds of her gown, and most unnervingly, her eyes. They seemed almost alive, glimmering as if harboring a secret, silently pleading for attention. Eleanor felt an inexplicable pull toward the portrait. Something about it resonated deep within her, a haunting familiarity that she could neither name nor understand. She set her satchel down, carefully unpacking her brushes, her eyes never leaving the painting. "Take your time," Lord Hawthorne murmured, moving to the far side of the room. "But remember, Miss Reed, this portrait is delicate. It has a long history. Many who have attempted to restore it before you have found it challenging." Eleanor smiled politely, masking the flicker of unease that crept along her spine. "I am confident I can handle it." As she began inspecting the painting, Eleanor noticed faint cracks in the paint, almost imperceptible layers beneath the surface that seemed to shift subtly when viewed from different angles. She took a step closer, brushing her fingers over the edge of the frame, and for a fleeting second she thought she heard a whisper. Soft, like the rustling of silk. She paused, holding her breath, but the room was silent. Shaking off the sensation as a trick of her imagination, Eleanor prepared her palette and began her work. Each careful stroke revealed more detail, and with every repair a fragment of the past seemed to emerge from the canvas. The woman's gaze was hypnotic, almost accusatory, and Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Not by Lord Hawthorne, nor by any human presence, but by the portrait itself. The afternoon waned into evening, and the room darkened as the last rays of sunlight faded. Eleanor stepped back to examine her progress and felt a chill that had nothing to do with the dropping temperature. The whispering had returned, this time clearer, almost like words caught between a sigh and a plea. She tilted her head, trying to catch the sound, but the voice vanished, leaving only a lingering sense of unease. Lord Hawthorne's footsteps echoed softly behind her. "You sense it, don't you?" he asked, his voice low, almost conspiratorial. "The portrait. It does not merely depict her likeness. It contains her essence, her story, and perhaps more." Eleanor turned to him, her curiosity piqued despite the apprehension. "Her essence?" she asked, wary of sounding foolish. "Some call it superstition," he said, glancing back at the painting. "Others call it history. But those who have come before you, Restorers, historians, even artists have all felt it. The whispers, the presence, the eyes that seem to watch you long after you've looked away. Eleanor swallowed hard, feeling the hairs on her arms rise. The air seemed heavier now, tinged with the weight of untold stories and secrets buried deep within the layers of paint. She resumed her work, her hand steady despite the shiver that ran through her body. Hours passed, and as night fell completely, Eleanor noticed shadows deepening in corners where none should exist. The whispering grew more insistent, almost forming fragments of words. She held her breath, straining to catch them. "Help, please. A sudden knock at the door startled her, and she spun around to see Lord Hawthorne standing there, expression unreadable. "It is late," he said softly. "Perhaps we should continue in the morning. The manor is temperamental after dark." Eleanor nodded, still glancing at the portrait. Her hands trembled slightly, but not from fatigue, from the undeniable pull of something beyond explanation. As she packed her brushes and prepared to leave the room, she could swear the woman's eyes had shifted, following her every movement, silently begging her to uncover what had been hidden for centuries. That night, in her guest chamber, Eleanor lay awake, the whispering echoing faintly in her mind. She could not dismiss it as imagination. Wraithmore Manor was more than a house. It was a repository of secrets, of grief, and perhaps of something far darker than she had anticipated. And as the wind howled outside, rattling the ancient windows, she understood one unshakable truth. The portrait would not allow her to rest until its story was told, and she had just begun to scratch the surface. Chapter 2. Whispers and Hidden Layers. The next morning, Eleanor awoke to a gray, mist-laden dawn. The sun barely pierced the heavy clouds over Ashbourne, and a chill lingered in the corridors of Wraithmore Manor. Despite the day's gloom, Eleanor felt a strange compulsion to return to the drawing room and continue her work on the portrait. As she approached, the painting seemed almost to loom larger than before, its presence commanding the room. Eleanor unpacked her brushes once again, preparing to examine the layers she had not yet touched. She remembered Lord Hawthorne's words from the previous night, that the portrait contained the essence of its subject, perhaps something more. The first brushstroke she applied revealed a subtle texture beneath the visible paint. Faint outlines of what looked like another face, half hidden, appeared beneath the elegant figure. Eleanor paused, her heart racing. Could this be a hidden sketch, or was it something more? She had restored countless antique portraits before, but nothing had ever felt quite like this. A soft creak echoed through the room. Eleanor turned her head and glimpsed a shadow flit across the far corner. "Hello?" she called softly, though she knew no one else was in the room. The shadow did not respond, yet an uneasy sense of being observed prickled her skin. As she focused back on the painting, the whispers returned. This time they were clearer, yet still fragmented. "Help! Trapped! Find!" Eleanor's fingers trembled slightly, but she forced herself to continue working, tracing the subtle lines beneath the paint. Each layer she uncovered seemed to whisper a part of a story long buried, a story of loss, sorrow, and desperation. She noted the painstaking detail of the hidden sketches, another pair of eyes, a faint outline of hands reaching out, and intricate patterns that resembled old symbols. The manor seemed to respond to her concentration. A draft passed along the room, flickering the candlelight and casting elongated shadows that danced across the walls. Eleanor shivered but did not stop. She was drawn deeper into the painting's mystery, compelled by a force she could not name. Hours passed, and the afternoon faded into a dim twilight. Eleanor finally stepped back, examining the portrait from a distance. The woman's gaze seemed even more intense now, as though she had begun to recognize Eleanor as the one who might finally understand her. Eleanor realized she had been speaking to herself in quiet murmurs, voicing the questions the painting seemed to ask. "Who were you? What are you trying to tell me?" she whispered, almost afraid the portrait might respond. From somewhere deep within the shadows of the room came a faint scratching sound, like the tip of a pen on rough paper. Eleanor froze, her pulse quickening. Slowly, she followed the sound to the far side of the room, where the dust-covered furniture and forgotten artifacts rested. There, partially hidden beneath a sheet, she discovered a small leather-bound journal. The pages were yellowed and brittle, but Eleanor's fingers, guided by both curiosity and caution, gently opened it. The first entry was dated 1892, written in a delicate hand that trembled at times. I fear the portrait watches. I fear it remembers what I have done. No one must see this lest they too become trapped. Eleanor's breath caught. The handwriting was beautiful, almost eerily familiar in its elegance, yet the words carried a weight of despair. She flipped through more pages, finding sketches similar to those she had uncovered beneath the paint. Symbols, faces, and notes detailing strange rituals. Hints of tragedy and cryptic warnings filled the journal. The whispers returned, louder this time, threading through the room like a current she could not escape. Listen. Release, danger. Eleanor closed the journal, holding it close to her chest. She realized that the painting was not merely a work of art. It was a vessel of memory, grief, and perhaps something darker. Each restorer who had come before her had touched the surface without uncovering its true essence. Perhaps they had felt the whispers and been too frightened to proceed. The shadows shifted again, and Eleanor thought she saw a fleeting figure at the corner of her vision, an indistinct silhouette, vanishing whenever she tried to focus on it. Her logical mind argued for imagination, but her instincts told her otherwise. There was more here than paint and canvas. There was history, sorrow, and a warning that refused to be ignored. As evening settled over the manor, Eleanor felt the full weight of her isolation. She was alone, yet not alone. The painting watched, whispered, and beckoned. She understood now that the portrait's story would not be revealed in a single day, or even a single week. Patience, care, and courage would be required. Yet beneath the fear, Eleanor felt a spark of determination. She had been chosen, whether by chance or by some unseen force, to uncover the portrait's secrets. The whispers promised both danger and revelation, but she would face them. She had to. That night, as Eleanor retired to her chamber, the whispering continued faintly, threading through the corridors, curling into the corners of her mind. You will see? And Eleanor knew, with a certainty that both terrified and exhilarated her, that the portrait's story had only just begun. Chapter 3. The Hidden Truth. The following morning, Eleanor awoke to a soft drizzle tapping against the tall windows of Wraithmore Manor. The sky was a steel-gray expanse, heavy with clouds that pressed down upon the earth, as though the very atmosphere were conspiring with the manor to keep its secrets hidden. She rose, dressed, and made her way to the drawing room, her mind buzzing with fragments of the journal she had discovered the previous day. The portrait awaited her, draped in shadows that seemed deeper than the room warranted. Eleanor approached cautiously, her hands slightly trembling with anticipation. She recalled the journal's warning. No one must see this lest they too become trapped. She wondered briefly what trapped truly meant. The word echoed in her mind, heavy with implication, but she pushed the thought aside. She was here to uncover history, to restore art, not to indulge in superstition. Yet, superstition had a peculiar way of planting seeds of doubt, and Eleanor felt the whisper of unease as she began to work. Her brushes touched the canvas delicately, revealing layers hidden beneath centuries of varnish and grime. And then she saw it, a faint, almost imperceptible figure beneath the main image. It was a man, his features twisted in anguish, reaching out as though calling for help. Eleanor's breath caught in her throat. She had never encountered anything like this in her career. The whispers returned, more urgent this time. Here, no, free. Eleanor's hand shook slightly as she brushed away the last layer of grime. The man's image became clearer, his eyes wide and pleading. She realized with a cold jolt that the painting was telling a story, not merely of beauty, but of sorrow, betrayal, and perhaps vengeance. Suddenly, a cold draft swept through the room. The candles flickered violently, casting shadows that danced across the walls like living entities. Eleanor turned sharply, half expecting to see someone behind her, but the room was empty. Only the portrait remained silent, and yet it felt alive. She stepped back and considered her discovery. The journal had hinted at previous restorers disappearing after attempting to uncover the painting's hidden layers. She felt the weight of their fates pressing upon her. Was she walking the same perilous path? Eleanor swallowed hard. She had always trusted her instincts, but now they screamed caution. Her eyes returned to the portrait, and she noticed something new, a series of faint symbols etched into the frame itself. They were intricate, almost ritualistic, curling around the edges as though guarding the image. Eleanor traced them with her fingers, careful not to disturb the delicate carvings. As she did so, A sudden voice echoed softly in the room. It was not human, yet it carried emotion, fear, longing, and desperation all at once. "Find, release, before—" The words made no sense entirely, yet the urgency was unmistakable. Eleanor realized that the portrait was not merely an artistic endeavor, but a vessel of something far older and far more dangerous than she had imagined. Determined to learn more, she opened the journal once again, poring over entries that chronicled the fate of those who had come before her. Names, dates, and warnings filled the fragile pages. Each entry spoke of obsession, of nights spent listening to whispers, of shadows that moved independently, and of a presence that seemed to extend beyond the canvas into the very walls of the manor. One particular entry stood out. "Do not trust what you see. The eyes follow more than your movements. They follow your mind, your intentions. They know fear, they know desire, and they will use them against you." Eleanor felt a chill creep down her spine. She realized that her own thoughts, her own fears, might be shaping what she saw in the painting. Every brushstroke, every moment of hesitation could invite the unknown closer. Hours passed in tense silence, broken only by the occasional whisper or the scratch of her brush against the canvas. Eleanor's focus sharpened. She became acutely aware of the manor around her, the creak of the floors, the distant drip of water from a leaking roof, and the soft flutter of wings from some unseen bird trapped in the eaves. Every sound seemed amplified, every shadow alive. By late afternoon, Eleanor uncovered the final hidden layer of the painting. Beneath the elegant lady, beneath the anguished man, there was a scene of horror, a room filled with shadows, and within them, faces contorted in fear and despair. The figures were frozen in time, trapped in the paint itself. Eleanor realized with dawning horror that the portrait did not merely depict the past. It contained it, captured it, and held it captive. The whispers grew louder, now almost insistent. "You must finish and release." Eleanor's hands trembled. The painting demanded something from her, but what? The journal offered no answers, only more questions, and the weight of generations pressed upon her shoulders. She understood that this was not just a restoration project. It was a test, a confrontation with something beyond comprehension. As the evening fell and darkness enveloped the manor, Eleanor felt a presence in the room behind her. She turned slowly, half expecting to see Lord Hawthorne, but no one was there. Yet the sense of being watched was undeniable. She realized that the portrait's story was not yet complete, and that she had become part of it. Eleanor's mind raced. How many before her had failed? How many had succumbed to the whispers, to the shadows, to the painting itself? And most importantly, would she be able to resist the pull, the demand, the desperate call of the trapped souls within the canvas? As she finally stepped back, exhausted but resolute, Eleanor whispered to herself, "I will uncover your story. I will not be afraid. Whatever it takes, I will see this through." The portrait seemed to respond, if only in the way shadows shifted and whispers threaded through the room, curling around her senses. Eleanor knew, with a certainty both terrifying and exhilarating, that the hidden truth of Wraithmore Manor was only beginning to reveal itself, and the danger was far from over. Chapter 4. The imprisoned Souls Night had fallen over Wraithmore Manor like a velvet curtain, heavy and suffocating. Eleanor Reed lingered in the drawing room, her eyes locked onto the portrait that had already consumed days of her focus. The storm outside rattled the tall windows, and each flash of lightning illuminated the room in stark, fleeting brilliance. In that harsh white light, Eleanor could see the faces beneath the layers of paint more clearly, twisted expressions frozen in eternal despair. The whispers returned, louder, urgent, and almost commanding. "Free, release. Now." Eleanor's heart pounded in her chest. She had uncovered the hidden layers. She had seen the trapped figures, and yet the portrait demanded more. She realized, with a shiver of fear and awe, that the souls within the painting were conscious, aware of her presence, and pleading for her to act. She picked up the journal again, scanning the pages for guidance. Earlier entries hinted at attempts by previous restorers to interact with the hidden figures. Each attempt had ended in disaster, strange illnesses, madness, disappearances. Eleanor understood now that the portrait was more than art. It was a prison, and those imprisoned were beyond normal human reach. As the rain lashed against the windows, Eleanor felt a subtle vibration in the floorboards, a rhythm that seemed synchronized with the whispers. She knelt before the painting, carefully brushing away the final remnants of dust and varnish, and whispered softly, "I will help you. I do not know how, but I will." The air in the room thickened, almost tangible, pressing against her chest. Shadows in the corners seemed to grow and twist, reaching toward her with elongated, sinewy shapes. Eleanor's breath quickened. She could feel the presence of the trapped souls moving just beyond the veil of perception, straining to communicate, to touch the living world. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught her eye. One of the shadowed figures in the painting shifted, a hand lifting slightly, a whisper of life threading through the otherwise frozen canvas. Eleanor gasped, her hands trembling, but she did not retreat. She knew now that the painting's power was real, that these were not mere illusions, but conscious entities trapped in a state between worlds. The journal provided only partial instructions, cryptic at best. It spoke of symbols, incantations, and rituals meant to bind or release the spirits within the canvas. Eleanor recognized some of the symbols from the frame, etched delicately into the wood, curling around the edges like protective wards. She traced them with her fingers, careful to follow the precise shapes, repeating the phrases she could decipher. By brush and hand, by will and mind, let the bound be free, yet safe from harm. As she recited the words, the room seemed to respond. The shadows pulsed, the whispers grew louder, and the figures in the painting became more distinct. Eleanor realized with a chill that the souls were testing her, gauging her intentions, her courage, her strength. One wrong move and the delicate balance could shatter, releasing something far darker than she could imagine. Hours passed, the storm outside raging, the room alive with energy. Eleanor worked tirelessly, her movements precise and deliberate, brushing, tracing, and speaking the words aloud. The whispers shifted into coherent phrases, names and memories emerging. A mother calling for her child, a soldier begging for mercy, a young girl whispering her final secrets. Eleanor's hands ached. Her eyes stung from strain, but she pressed on, determined to see the ritual through. By midnight, a profound change occurred. The trapped figures appeared to relax, their faces softening, expressions shifting from fear to hope. The shadows that had clawed and writhed at the corners receded slightly, as though acknowledging Eleanor's efforts. She sensed that she was close to success, that the portrait was ready to release its secrets, yet a final step remained. The journal warned of this moment. The final act required a confrontation with the painting itself, a surrender of one's own fear and doubt. Eleanor inhaled deeply, her heart pounding, and approached the canvas once more. She placed her hands flat against its surface, feeling the energy coursing beneath, as though the souls were reaching out to her, guiding her. "I am not afraid," she whispered. "I am here to help. I am here to witness." A sudden gust of wind swept through the room, extinguishing the candles, plunging Eleanor into darkness. The whispers intensified, filling the chamber with a chorus of desperate voices. Release, free at last. Then, as abruptly as it had begun, silence fell. Eleanor blinked, her eyes adjusting to the dim light of the storm filtering through the windows. The painting now appeared calm, the anguished figures within seeming at peace. Eleanor's hands rested on the frame, and for the first time she felt no weight of sorrow pressing upon her chest. But relief was short-lived. A sudden realization struck her. The souls were free, yes, but their release had altered the fabric of the manor itself. The air shimmered with residual energy, and the shadows moved independently, no longer confined to the walls. Eleanor understood that the balance of Wraithmore Manor had shifted irrevocably. She had done what no previous restorer could, but she had also awakened something ancient and powerful. Lord Hawthorne's voice echoed softly from the doorway, startling her. "You've done what I feared no one could," he said, his eyes wide with awe and unease. "But Eleanor, are you certain you understand what you have released?" Eleanor turned to him, her gaze returning to the portrait one last time. The woman's eyes, once pleading and intense, now held a serene depth, as though expressing gratitude and warning simultaneously. Eleanor nodded, though uncertainty gnawed at the edges of her mind. "Yes," she said quietly. "I understand. Enough to know this is far from over." As she left the drawing room, the whispers had faded, leaving only the soft hum of energy that now seemed to permeate the manor. Eleanor knew that Wraithmore Manor had changed, and so had she. The souls were free, but their story would continue to echo in the hallways, in the shadows, in every whispered secret that the manor held. And somewhere deep within the walls, Eleanor felt that the portrait's eyes, calm and knowing now, were watching her still, a reminder that some stories never truly end. Chapter 5. The final decision dawn broke over Wraithmore Manor with a pale, hesitant light brushing the landscape with silver-gray tones. Eleanor Reed awoke with a lingering sense of unease, the events of the previous night still vivid in her mind. The souls in the portrait had been freed, yet the manor itself felt different, charged, alive, and unpredictable. She knew that the final step lay ahead, understanding the full truth of the portrait and deciding what must be done next. She made her way to the drawing room, her footsteps echoing across the empty halls. The portrait hung silently, serene now, the figures once trapped appearing at peace. Yet Eleanor could feel the undercurrent of energy, a quiet hum that suggested the house had absorbed something of the soul's essence. The air felt thick, almost tangible, pulsing with the life of the story that had unfolded within the canvas. Lord Hawthorne appeared behind her, his expression grave yet admiring. "You've done what no one before could," he said. "But Eleanor, now comes the final question. Will you leave the portrait here, or take it away? Its power, its history, it will follow whoever possesses it." Eleanor's gaze returned to the painting. The woman's eyes met hers, calm and wise, as though urging caution. The anguished figures were gone, but the story remained embedded in the canvas, in the frame, in the very fibers of the art. To remove it from the manor might spread the energy, the echoes of centuries of grief and mystery into the world. Yet leaving it here might invite future dangers, should the manor ever be disturbed again. She traced her fingers along the frame, feeling the subtle vibrations that still lingered. The whispers had faded, but Eleanor sensed they were merely resting, watching and waiting. The journal lay open on the table, pages fluttering as if moved by an unseen breeze. She had read every entry, every warning, every sketch, and understood that the painting was more than history. It was a living memory, a vessel for souls and a mirror of human emotion. Eleanor took a deep breath and spoke aloud, almost as if addressing the woman in the portrait directly. "I cannot take you with me. Your story belongs here where it began, but I will protect it. I will ensure no harm comes to you again." The air seemed to shift in response, warmer, softer. A faint light glimmered around the edges of the portrait, and for a moment Eleanor thought she saw a subtle smile form on the woman's face. The final decision was made. She would leave the portrait in Wraithmore Manor, safeguarded and respected, but her role as its guardian would continue. As she carefully replaced the journal in its protective box, Eleanor felt a profound connection to the past, to the lives that had been trapped, and to the mysterious legacy of Wraithmore Manor. She understood that history was not just to be preserved, but to be honored and witnessed. By acknowledging the truths within the painting, she had given the souls their voice, their freedom, and herself a new understanding of courage and responsibility. Lord Hawthorne observed her silently, the weight of the manor pressing upon them both. "You've changed this house," he said softly. "It's no longer simply a home or a relic. It is alive, aware, and you have given it new purpose." Eleanor nodded, feeling the truth in his words. She knew that the manor would never be the same again, nor would she. The whispers, the shadows, the hidden layers of history, they had taught her the delicate balance between curiosity and respect, between bravery and caution. She had faced the unknown and emerged with insight and resolve. For a while the two of them stood in silence, listening to the wind whispering through the trees, carrying with it the faint echoes of the freed souls. The painting hung peacefully on the wall, no longer a prison but a testament to lives once hidden and voices finally heard. Eleanor realized that the final lesson of Wraithmore Manor was not simply about uncovering the past, but about understanding one's own place within it. Courage, patience, and empathy had guided her, and in return she had been granted wisdom far beyond her expectations. As she prepared to leave the drawing room, she cast one last glance at the portrait. The woman's eyes seemed to shine with gratitude, a silent acknowledgement of Eleanor's bravery and respect. Eleanor smiled softly, knowing that she had made the right choice. And as the first light of morning touched the manor's ancient stones, Eleanor Reed understood something fundamental. Every story, no matter how dark or mysterious, had the potential for release, for understanding, and for peace, if one approached it with patience, courage, and an open heart. She stepped into the hall, leaving the drawing room and its secrets behind for now. The manor had shared its story, the souls were free, and she carried with her the lessons of the whispers, the shadows, and the hidden truth of Wraithmore Manor. Yet in the quiet moments, Eleanor knew that the echoes of the past would linger, a reminder that some stories never truly end. They simply await the next listener, the next witness, and the next courageous heart willing to face the unknown.